All right, I'd like to call this meeting back to order. We have had a request to finish out the superintendent's report. So once again, we will go a little bit out of order and finish that item number 8 up now. So, Dr. Markley.
All right. Three things I want to cover here. One, as I mentioned earlier, Cindy Hook Promise rolled out today. That is the statewide anonymous reporting system. Ms. Askew, how many have we had today so far? Because you're finishing up whatever you're...
Thank you. Sorry. I don't know exactly how many we've had total, but as of about 9:30 this morning, we had already received a couple of reports and had both schools responding, and they were generally of concern that we wouldn't have gotten otherwise because they were completely anonymous and it's completely operated by our students. So we felt that we had quick response on both of those first thing this morning.
And if you could just explain, one of the two of you, explain a little bit for everybody what that is, what that anonymous reporting system is.
Yeah, we had actually talked about rolling out Cindy Hook Promise individually as a district over a year ago, but then the state came in and decided they were going to run this statewide. And so they partnered with the Sandy Hook Foundation, which is obviously because of the Sandy Hook massacre came about. And so this anonymous reporting system allows you to call in, report a tip if it's not you, or if you're just an individual who needs help, do that. And then they will make an immediate call either to law enforcement or to a school person to try to get assistance for that student. We anticipate when they've rolled this out, for example, in Pennsylvania, you had an initial spike of some false reporting, but then it leveled off to a point where you were getting, all you were getting were the serious calls that we needed. So we've had staff members trained, we have rolled out information to all of our students, and today was the first day it went live statewide. Ms. Askew, anything you want to add to that?
The other thing is there's an app that you can download, and our students have been trained to download that so that their information, anything that they want to report can be shared pretty quickly and immediately.
All right, second piece, had a phone call from the county manager about setting up a joint work session as part of the budget planning process. We've tentatively identified December 5th in the afternoon as the date for that. So I think Ms. Adams has reached out to you folks. Just wanted to make sure you had that on your calendar. That we have a board meeting that Tuesday, so it'll be that same week.
Right before the meeting?
What?
Oh, it'll be.
No, our meeting will be
okay.
on the 2nd. This meeting will be on the 3rd. This meeting will be on the 5th.
Okay.
So, location to be determined, I assume? We don't have a location yet, do we? Mm-mm. Okay.
We'll work on that.
All right. Guys, we have waited around for the state to pass a budget, and they haven't. And guys, you can blame whoever you want. That's not my issue. But we have a classified pay plan that we've had ready to roll in anticipation of that budget. And I am directing our finance folks to start that process running. Mary Hazel, I'll let you run through the parameters of that real quick.
Sure. I just wanted to point out that last month the board approved the non-salary, the central office administrator scale, and new supplement for special ed, and new principal and school administrator supplements. And we had them all on hold until there was a state budget. Most all of that is locally funded. There's a small amount of the non-certified that is state funded, but we think that even if worst case scenario there is no state increase, we think there will be, but there's just a delay, but there's no state increase. The most we'd have to absorb is about $200,000, and we think with vacancy savings, we could, if for some reason the state didn't approve a pay increase at all for non-certified, we could still try to cover all the initiatives the board wanted to do with that new pay scale. So I would recommend that we go ahead and implement in November, effective back to July 1.
Run through the non-certified categories for the board.
Sure. On the non-certified, we were increasing several things. We wanted to have increase the child nutrition helper to a $12 minimum wage. The bus driver, let me skip that one. The overall non-certified to a minimum wage of $13 per hour. The bus driver minimum to $14. The average the increases for each employee varied depending on where they fell on the scale. The lower they were on the scale, probably the higher the increase, but it was a minimum 1% for everyone, which is based on what we thought was going to be the state increase. For central office, it was just a step, increasing the base by 1%, but there's nobody on the base. So everybody else, it would just be a step and kind of leaving the scale where it was. And the supplements included a flat rate principal and AP supplement, and the new, let's see if I can find it, the new special ed teacher supplement of $100.
And we would back pay that to the beginning of the year?
Say that again?
We would back,
We
we would
would.
retro
I
that?
can't, I can't promise when we'd get the retro done. At the latest, it would be done in December, but we at least would want to get, but the new pay scale is effective by the end of the month. And then as soon as possible, we would retro everything.
we
The other
would-
thing we don't know is the state could, the governor tomorrow could approve the mini budget that included raises that were even higher for this, but that just means the state would pick up more of the cost. And I looked, even if it was a 2% minimum, it's still gonna be about the same local cost for us.
We're asking for this because we had put this in our local budget, so it's not, and we're waiting for the state budget to come on board, but we can do our local portion of this now, and be able to retro pay the folks back to the beginning of the, school year. So, Mayor Hazel, do we need an approval for that?
Well, the salary schedules were already
Were already
approved, but the
approved.
effective date is what I'm asking, that could we go ahead and implement now? So,
So I would ask the board that we would, that permission to implement.
And that gives bus drivers a pay raise to starting pay at $14 an hour,
Correct.
which
And
should
and
help
go back-
some with the recruitment.
And we would go back and pay them for the time we were waiting for this to happen.
and the average increase for bus drivers would be 3.3%, which is a little bit higher than the average for most others.
Didn't you say $13 an hour?
No, I said 13 for non-certified, but 14 for bus drivers. And then our plan was the following year to try to go to 14 for everybody else and 15 for bus drivers. So we sort of had a.
Okay, but that still doesn't really alleviate the situation right now.
It doesn't, but it makes more progress than we've made, and at least going ahead and implementing something we just felt like was important, so.
Okay, but normally, if we're gonna be doing this would not be a supplement. You were waiting for the state to increase the pay for the bus drivers, correct?
Yeah, this is just the state gives us a range that we can pay, and so this is
Right.
just increasing where we fall within the range.
So it's no local supplement to bus drivers. That's what you were hoping that would be passed if the budget had been passed.
Right.
Now, the supplement pieces we're paying are the local supplement.
Oh, yeah, for the other people, the other
the other-
positions, but not for bus drivers.
No, it was a straight pay increase for the bus drivers.
Right, it was straight
But
pay.
that was figuring that the state eventually is going to take it up when they finally pass their
We
budget.
hope, but if they don't, then we'll deal with it locally. So, because we do have local transportation funding as well, so.
But that's the expectation, it'll be up to that amount, because it's a statewide problem, and that's what the hopeful thing is when the budget gets passed. But that's still not, unless there was some way that the budget was passed and they did not approve the statewide increase for the bus drivers, then we would locally eat that little amount that you're talking about, correct? That we're allowing now.
I'm not sure what,
The 200,000 was for the
14
non-certified
state
scale,
business.
not the bus driver scale. We feel like we have enough currently to absorb with current transportation funding, the $14 minimum. If more state money comes in, we could talk about that again, but right now, with the current budget we have for transportation, that's where we are with the $14 minimum.
And that's like a lot of these other changes, is that we're hoping that at some point, we're going to have a budget that will take the slack up that we're
We
paying
are.
right now,
We
correct? Right. So this isn't actually anything above what we hope the state will do eventually. This isn't,
Well, I will say originally, all of our non-certified pay, which was increasing quite a bit, the state was only going to pay a 1% increase for all of that, including bus drivers. There have been several different discussions about what they may or may not do for bus drivers, but in the conference budget, it was 1%. And so if they end up doing more, then yes, that would take
Nice.
more of the cost, because generally bus drivers are state paid.
generally, but there are districts that are struggling like we are, that they successfully have it high enough that they're not having the issues we're having. Like
There are
Durham, I use
districts,
that
there are
for
It's
example.
there are
everything I'm
districts that
hearing
are
is
paying more than
statewide.
us that have larger holes than we do.
Yeah, but there's
And
some
we
that,
told them,
and if you don't know how
but-
you, if you don't try, how are you gonna know? Because there's places like
Well, we
Durham that
actually
don't have
have
that.
reached out to those larger districts. They pay a higher rate of pay than we do, and they have more vacancies than we do.
Some of them do. I've done the research
Okay.
too, yeah.
Okay, all right,
Durham,
sure.
as of 2 days, as of a couple days ago, was 17 drivers short.
They're a lot, what's the size difference?
And as he told me, he's constantly having to look for new drivers.
Right, but
Currently,
what's their population? What's their student population?
About 30,000. I mean, we're 26,000. He's about 6,000 or 7,000 more than us. I mean, we have 8 vacancies, so he's got about double the vacancies.
Well, from what I was looking at this last weekend, they have more substitutes is what they're looking for, not that permanent vacancies.
They have permanent full-time.
Now, I polled all the large districts and asked them to give me their vacancies. Wake, currently,
Pay less, yeah, than Durham does.
actually, they pay more than Durham. Wake
It's
pays,
not for starting.
average pay is $15.72.
It said starting.
They've got 350 vacancies in Wake.
That's a huge district.
Gaston, he has 210 drivers currently advertising for 16 positions. Cabarrus is having difficulty because they can't compete with other businesses. Cumberland has a constant turnover as well. Pay ranges in all of the large districts from a low of 13 from a starting pay of 12,
Yes.
12, 13. So our starting pay is actually above what most of the other large districts are.
What's their starting pay?
Cumberland is 12,
I said,
18,
so what is our starting pay?
will be 14,
But I was talking about presently.
13 something.
And we're one of the few districts that offer full-time benefits.
Cumberland makes all their TAs, cafeteria folks, and custodians drive buses as well.
Actually, I think a lot of them do offer full-time now. I think that's one of the things that they're all moving to. But I would say that, rather than us, trying to shoot at the dartboard to figure out what the thing is that's gonna solve it by adding $1 to the pay or whatever, we have to look at this, strategically and say, okay, let's rank the priorities for bus drivers, but we also have to look to see what the state is gonna do. We have a lot of priorities that we're looking at. We just heard a presentation with a really huge number on it for for security. So rather than saying we're gonna take some of our fund balance, which is non-recurring, and devote it to recurring expenses, we need to figure out what is going to solve this. And I don't
Well-
think that's gonna be just from us up here.
Well,
That's gonna be
that
a
solution about
conversation with everybody
recurring
else.
was not for next year. This is for this year. The recurring can be done when the budget
That
is,
away.
when you draw up next year's budget, then you can redistribute.
Who are you gonna ask to pay for that?
Our administration in this district is 43% more than at other comparative-sized districts in the state.
So who are you gonna fire? Is that what
You
you're
don't have to
talking about?
fire, you've got the whole summer coming on, you got the budget, you got to look at. This is complex, but on the other hand, it's priorities. There are children standing out every morning in the dark, coming home hours late. And, heaven forbid, we have a flu epidemic. What are we going to do then with bus drivers? We've got lines and lines of parents dropping kids off because they've given up on the buses. It's just sad because this is a problem. We're getting emails constantly. You heard the people tonight. I'm getting phone calls. And if we don't address this, if you don't do something, nothing's going to happen.
No, I agree. And one thing that I do agree, I think we all acknowledge there's a bus problem.
Right.
And the fact is, we all want to fix that problem. Ms. Eastep does, Mr. Ravenbart does, I do, Ms. Nichols and Mr. Boyer. But you know what's really selfish? When a board member sends another email to someone and says, I'm the only one that cares.
I feel
No, you don't. Because you've
I
heard
didn't
us-
say
you've
that.
heard
I
us
said
talk
I
about it.
feel that way because I'm getting very
You,
frustrated.
no,
didn't say
you said you were the only board member that cared about
that
fixing the bus
wanted to
problem.
rectify the situation,
So
so.
it's
you're-
easier to work together, because I think we all understand there's a bus
Nothing has
issue.
been happening working together. This is the second or
haven't-
third
you haven't
year
worked
that this
together
has
yet.
been a problem,
So-
and it needs to be solved.
Exactly.
You know,
We're trying
assaulting
to-
people is
We all
not going
are
to solve
trying
it.
to.
Doing
But
something will.
another dollar is not going to solve it.
$2 would, and I think we.
No.
I don't see that.
You know what, if you could at least have the the desire to have them look in the budget what it would cost for $2 an hour across the board. Just look. You don't have to say yes or no or vote. But that's like when I was asking for the $15 last year. You weren't even having, you said, don't even have him look.
But that's not what you said last year.
That was
What
last
you
year.
said is you looked in front of all these assistant principals and said, let's cut the assistant principals. Let's cut the trainers.
I'm talking
That's
about
what you
the
were gonna
vote.
do.
I asked, you
what you
voted
said.
against him even looking. I said that
No,
was a
you were doing that
suggestion.
as we were sitting there making making
You know
the
what?
vote.
Attacking me is not going to
We're not-
change the
I'm not
fact that
attacking
you.
we
I'm not
need to
trying to.
have
I'm not attacking
answers
you.
to
We
questions.
do. We all need to work
Well,
together.
then why don't you
But when you
ask-
send an email saying that you're the only board member that cares, that's ridiculous because we're all up here. We're all spending hours today doing what we're doing, trying to figure out
And
solutions.
why are we spending hours today?
To try to figure out solutions. What are you doing?
I'm sitting here waiting for you to finally bring the topic up after how long did it take to get there?
So all these other things are not important?
They're
I guess
important, but
not.
I didn't create
I
the
guess
agenda.
security and
Somebody
risk-
else did.
Sadia, you,
Gosh.
I mean, we've heard about mental health issues all today. We've heard about,
Yes, we
we've
have.
allowed the public to speak,
Yes.
which we normally do. You're criticizing the fact that we're now talking about buses now? We've had a pretty full evening. The fact
We
of the
don't have
matter
much
is-
of a full house now, do we?
So the emergent presentation, the security and risk assessment, what would you
They could
cut?
be done, not the security risk, but other things, like the immersion, that could have been a next.
Oh.
The point is that
The
there's,
point is, you don't agree with anything that anybody else does, which is why we have
that's
a
your
hard time
perception. I
working with
think that
you.
we need to focus on the buses and not insulting me. We need to focus on these kids getting off the
insulting
You know
street
what
in
I
the morning
think?
in the dark.
Let me tell you the only way that it's going to get done. Not you telling other people you're the only person that cares, because there's
That
seven people.
has
there's seven- it
nothing to
absolutely
do
does.
with the
There's
decision to
seven
do
people on this
something.
board. It takes 4 votes to get it done, not a Judy vote. So figure out a way
You
to
know
work
what?
with us.
You are not trying to solve the problem. You're
Oh,
trying
I'm
to
not.
insult. We
What?
need to solve the problem.
We are trying to solve
Now,
the
so why
problem.
don't you
That's what
have
we're
them
talking
look
about.
and see how much it would cost to have the $2 raise, okay? All
don't
they
agree
have
that
to
that
do
would
is
work.
investigate.
Dr. Markley, do you have anything else to add to this?
I think the next for us, I mean, we've talked about with transportation, a couple of things. One is hiring bus drivers immediately until, typically it's a multi-week process to go from getting a bus driver to hiring. And so that's a barrier to folks who want to work. So we're going to start hiring the bus driver immediately, provide them some additional training, use them as bus monitors. We think that'll help some folks over that 6-week period. And Eddie's looking at, and we need to take a real serious look at a 3-tier bus system. I know that's not always popular,
Well-
but it
But if we
requires
do that,
fewer
we have,
drivers.
yeah, other people are going to have
Amazing.
to understand that they're standing, not at 6:30 at the bus stop, but they're standing at 5:30 at the bus stop.
Right.
I'm just saying, just so
I agree
people
with
are aware.
that. That's crazy.
People are aware. I mean,
That's-
there are a lot of issues, but you know what, the fact of the matter is, Judy, and we're having the discussion.
Yes, we
And
are,
that's
thank
the
goodness.
important
We
thing.
should have had it earlier.
Had this discussion so many times.
About time. Could you, Dr. Markley, can you find out how much it would talk across the board for $2 an hour increase? Starting with the new hires and also the ones we already have,
Do
are
you want to take them
$1.
to $16 an hour?
If you're starting off right now at 14, were we starting off originally at 14 at the beginning of the year? How
We're
much?
taking we were
plan-
trying to take a vote.
How
to
much
get
did
to
we
14.
start at the beginning of the year?
When we put the budget together, the plan was $14 an hour. We anticipating that the state would actually pass a budget. So we,
Okay, go ahead.
We're voting on $14 an hour, I think that's right?
correct.
We're voting on $14
I was
an hour.
talking over, originally I thought the figure from what I was hearing was something like 1243, and then I heard 1341. So I've heard various figures about what the starting pay is for the bus drivers at this time. What is it, I'm asking?
In about 10 minutes, hopefully it's
Record.
$14 an hour.
No, I'm just asking right now, because you said the $2 an hour and 16. I want to tell you what my answer
It's
is.
approximately, it's around $13 an hour.
Okay, so that would make
13.41.
it over 15 is what I'm asking, to
But what I'm-
$2 an hour.
Ms. Justice, what I'm trying to tell you is our budget was for $14.
Right, I heard
We
that.
put it on hold pending the state budget.
Right.
Now that the state budget hasn't passed, so we're going to implement our budget, which is $14 an hour.
So I'm asking for another dollar. That's what I was trying to clarify. Could you look and find out how much that would have cost if we implemented over the $15 an hour starting?
Mayor Haley, you got your hand up over there?
I was just going to answer a couple of the questions. Currently, we have 15 steps on the bus driver scale. It starts at 1341 and it goes up to 1665.
1341 is what it's starting right now?
1341, that's the current scale. The maximum the state allows us to pay per hour out of their money is $17.45.
Out of their money.
What we're proposing starts at 14. I didn't actually bring the scale, but it's what the board approved last month. And most of the steps are going to go up like 3.3%. If you did the, I don't know.
Are we still within the
If
norm?
you did,
We're still
our
within-
plan for the
regardless of
second year, which was at $15, that, a $15 minimum, I think this increase is gonna cost an additional $169,000, that would be another about $168,000.
$169,000?
But if you did a $2 increase, that would be, an additional $387, because then you're raising the ones that are already above 15 much higher. And it goes $1.20 per hour above what the state would allow us to pay, and then we'd have to pick up that local, and I hadn't figured that cost. So I think we get into an area, if we do a $2 raise, where the state won't fund it. So I'd have to
Yeah.
go back and analyze that further, and I haven't done that yet.
Thank you. That's what I wanted to know. I mean, we give supplements to all these other positions, and this is an extremely important position. I don't see any reason why, if we're giving it to, you were just talking about administrators, why can't we give it to bus drivers? We're not talking about the kind of supplements that they're making. I mean, these are people that get our kids to school every day and bring them back. We got over 10,000 kids in those buses, and we need to treat those bus drivers with the respect that causes them to want to come out and work and for us. So we won't have some of the
Hey,
issues
Hazel,
we're having now.
does the state, are they talking about supplements for bus drivers? Or are they talking about salary increases? Or hourly
Well,
wage increases?
For the state, they usually just increase the funding and allow the local board to make a decision on salaries. They just give you a range. So that range would go up 1%, but that's all.
We've typically rolled it into an increase in their regular salary as opposed to holding it for a supplement.
We've got a time crunch going on. It's November now. We've had kids doing this since August. And it's not gotten any better. And I am seriously tired of trying to explain this to parents. Work at kids flunking out of classes that have had A's all through their career, and now they're making F's. Why? Because nobody's addressed this problem. It needs to be addressed.
I really think it's so incredibly rude and unfair of you to characterize it that way, because you are just trying to bait us into saying that we're not.
No, I'm not trying to bait you. I want you to do something. I don't want you to defend yourself, just do
I let you
it.
finish. Stop being so rude, please. Now, I think it's safe to say that we all have a disagreement on what it would take to retain bus drivers. I mean, I would say that's an understatement. But I also think that the answer isn't contained with us here. I would maintain that we would have to bring transportation in on it, because they are the experts. I would say Mr. Anderson should be brought into the conversation. So rather than us, again, taking a dart and trying to throw it at the dartboard and saying, let's pay $1 an hour extra, let's pay a supplement extra, let's find out what the real reasons are, what the barriers are, and then
about a
come up with
signing
a
bonus?
solution.
Have we thought about a signing bonus? I think Chapel Hill Carrboro did a signing bonus, right? And they had some success doing that.
These are great ideas. I agree.
Mr. Anderson, what have you
For
done?
people that haven't thought about it, gosh, isn't that
We've
wonderful?
I've thought about it. It's been
We've
said.
talked about signing bonuses.
Eddie, you've done a lot of work on this issue. Can you just talk about some of the things you've done?
Well, some of the things that we are doing or implementing immediately, or putting together for discussion in the upcoming budget. We're promoting things as much as possible. I actually rode the bus with WECT and Ann McAdams the other day. I think she is putting together a really good story about the relationship with our drivers and students, and really trying to promote that the position. And make people aware that we do have openings and that it is a good position. We're going to be looking at and signing bonuses. One of the things we want to bring up, I think Mr. Rivenbark at one point recommended referral bonuses. I mean, I think that's an excellent idea. Something else that we'll be looking at. You know, I think our bus drivers deserve more pay. I think our custodians deserve more pay. I think all our employees deserve more pay, but I understand too that you know, it's a process. We are having these problems. It's most evident with our bus drivers because it affects children and parents every day. So we hear those concerns, but we have 15 vacancies in custodial positions. You know, and so we feel the effect of that, but until those vacancies increase, we won't hear about it as much. All of the things that we're talking about doing collectively, I think will help improve things. I don't think it'll solve the issue 100%. If you want to solve it 100%, you really need to look at a 3-tier system.
But this is not a new issue. You've been working on bus drivers
We've
going
been
back
working.
into the summer.
Well, I would say this: over the past 10 years, we've taken 53 buses off the road. You know, there's 2 ways to address the issue. You can increase the driver pool, or you can decrease the number of buses and the number of drivers you need. Over the past 10 years, we've taken 53 buses off the road. And we're to the point now where, you know, we're over 95% efficient, and you know, it's hard to take, you know, 10 buses off the road. It's slowly catching up with us. My point is, if we hadn't done that, if we had not been addressing this problem for the past, you know, 5 to 10 years, think where we would be today. We had 19 vacancies this morning. You know, what if that had been 70?
Would a signing bonus be a way to get around the state of increasing salaries, a one-time signing bonus?
Well, it would be local. It definitely would be something you have to do locally, but if you did that, it'd probably be a good idea to require a certain amount of work.
After
So
3
like,
months or
yeah,
something.
after 3 months or
yeah.
something like
No,
that.
absolutely. After
Just
3
to
months.
make sure that they,
Oh, yeah.
Well, what we've talked about is you know, maybe doing half at 3 months and half at the end of the
Yeah.
school year. I mean, there's got to be something there.
I think Chapel Hill did a what, $1,000 one? I think it was $1,000
Yes.
signing bonus.
Another thing that we've done that I think really will make a difference is, you know, right now, if you're lucky and the timing works well and you pass everything on the first round, it's probably a 6 to 8 week process to get hired. If you're actively looking for a job, you don't have 6 to 8 months. So we're now bringing, if you apply, we interview you. We're now going to be working with HR, do the background checks and the reference checks, bring them on board as quick as possible, put them in a bus as a monitor, get them on the payroll, and let them gain some valuable experience immediately, and not have to wait that 6 to 8. The other thing about that is that we can keep up with those employees easier, and their progress in you know, in the written and driving tests. We're also working with the state. There's only one state examiner for this region. It would help tremendously if we could get a second state examiner. That's DMV and beyond our control. But we have worked with our state examiner, and they normally come every other month for about 3 days, and 2 of the days is training. She's now allowing us to do that training. So instead of her every other month spending 3 days with 2 employees, we're going to schedule the training in between. She can spend each day with 2 employees. We can get 6 employees every other month through the process instead of 2. So we're going to speed up that process. Not like we got a whole lot of candidates waiting for that process. But, you know, hopefully, again, there's no magic cure. It's all of these things working together that is going to improve things. We are not going to solve the situation by any of the things we've talked about, and not 100%, but we can make improvements.
Gotta try.
Have we talked to our current bus drivers?
and ask them about how they feel about the job?
We have, actually, in the state survey that just came out too. They did that statewide. So we've had a lot of feedback from the drivers. The issues with the drivers had reported, pay, hours, parents, students, behavior issues.
Pay?
Hey, I have two quick questions for you. Have we looked at adding some part-time drivers, people home off of a long truck haul, grabbing a morning shift, afternoon shifts? Is this something we've considered?
We've tried partnering with every organization you can think of, from veterans to firemen to EMS. If there are more organizations, pass them along. We'll be glad to reach out to them. In the past, we had some success with reaching out to our local fire departments. This time, we didn't get any responses. We've tried to reach out to some of our high school students that are 18 years of age or older. We've reached out to Cape Fear. We've reached out to UNCW.
That was my other question. When you say reach out, what do our recruiting efforts look like? What is reach out? I mean, are we just putting a poster? What does our recruiting effort look like?
Well, we are calling like the captain at the fire station. We're giving them information that they can pass along. If we have an opportunity to go in front of someone and talk to them, HR attends job fairs all over. We have 2 buses out now with recruitment posters.
I see them.
We have posters. We've actually done Connect 5 calls to parents.
Last year,
Hey, you need a job.
last year Eddie and Ken, and actually one of our board members, went to all of our cafeteria custodial workers, talked to them about picking up a bus driving shift as part of this. So we've done internal and external recruiting.
Try to pair those part-time custodial positions with part-time bus drivers.
And turned it into a full-time position. One of the issues also is that to drive a bus, only the state can certify you. It's not like a CDL where you can take a class at the community college and get a CDL. To get the passenger endorsement, and you can see that on when you look at there's no district in the state that certifies its own drivers, which is that final step.
And we talked about, Mr. Anderson and Dr. Markley, we talked about Wave Transit and the fact that they do train internally, but that's not an option to partner with them because it's not the same training.
It's not the same training. There's additional endorsements that would be required for that.
Yeah, it's funny, they actually pay less than we do, and we've lost bus drivers to Wave.
2 years ago, the state made the physical requirements for bus drivers much more stringent, and they increased the hardness of the bus driving written test. And it's been much more of a struggle to get people through it.
Was that in response to an increase in accidents? Or?
I don't think we ever knew what the reason was.
And in the immediacy, is there a plan for kids who are actually standing out there for an hour and a half, home pickups? It is a serious safety issue. I understand the public's concern.
Absolutely.
And Ken's turning those buses around as fast as he can. And once he gets a bus in, unloaded, if he has a driver, he sends them back out to pick up that second route.
I will say that the buses being late. I mean, we hate the bus being late. We typically, when we get a call or a complaint, we typically know why right away. But if a parent says they did not get a call, then that is something we're gonna take an extra step and look into that. If the bus is more than 15 minutes late, they should be getting a Connect 5 call as a notice. But we're going to look into that. I think one of the things we're looking at or rolling out the parent portal, will certainly help with that. And I think anything that, like you say, anything we can do to improve our communication, even if it doesn't solve the problem, but improving communication will help.
And one of the things, Dr. Markley, with hiring the bus monitors, they'll know the route for the substitute bus drivers, because that's been an issue. When you have a substitute bus driver and they don't know the route, then children get overlooked, or some of the kids give them the wrong instructions, and we have problems. So there are a lot of issues that people are not aware of that the bus drivers have to face.
It's, after spending almost an hour on the bus yesterday, I have a whole new respect for what the drivers do. It is a tough job.
It is.
It's a very tough
tremendous
job.
responsibility, and I'm not sure that our students understand how they impact the safety of themselves as well as all the other children.
The point is, though, we have the kids that we have, and we're working with our kids. We can't expect, we have control over the hiring of the bus drivers, the training of the bus drivers, and working with them. We can't necessarily do the kids as far as their behavior. And the behavior is, that's a whole different matter anyway. That's not what the issue is, I think, near as much as just the fact that if we paid to the point where it was more of a living wage, that would have definitely perked people up and attracted them more. And also, just literally self-respect, the way we treat our bus drivers. I'm concerned about what's going on with the tie-in with the teachers' assistants. We've got such a shortage on that, too. That's a problem in itself. So there's several things here that a pay could do no harm. And if we're going to pay these big supplements to these other positions, for a small supplement for the bus drivers, I think it's only decent.
We've got 4 teacher assistants who are bus drivers now. If everyone in the pipeline between now and January comes through, we'll have 12.
Yeah.
The positions that were quoted were new positions, came on Title I funding about 2 weeks ago. And they're being filled literally right now. So there's not the vacancies that was quoted. And we'll have 12 bus more, and actually almost 15 TA bus drivers. Remember, limited, because we can't do year-round schools, if everyone gets through the pipeline. And I can't promise everyone will get through the pipeline, but it looks good.
So we need a motion then, is that correct?
We need approval to implement the salary schedules that were in the budget.
Okay, is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Any further discussion? Do we need further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I would oppose because I think we need more.
So it passes 5-1?
5-1.
Thank you.
Is that your superintendent's report?
That's the 3 issues that I had, yes.
Okay.
Because we've covered safer schools already.
All right, going back to item 7, number D, graduation project presentation, Appendix G, Dr. Smith.
Yes, we will have Mr. Al Bryant come up and present on the graduation project. If you remember last month, we brought to you a board policy in which we no longer require the graduation project, and the board requested an update as to what schools were doing specifically around the graduation project. Mr. O'Brien?
Thank you, Dr. Smith. Thank you, Board of Education. Just a quick update for you guys regarding graduation project. As you guys recall, there was legislation that required us to take a look at graduation project as a district decision. And you guys may remember that graduation project is composed of the 4 Ps, the paper, the presentation, the product, and the portfolio. And we made a decision to move away from that because of the legislation that was put in place that would require us to provide funding for students to actually have support in this. So we made a decision to move away from that due to the fact that it was going to be cost prohibitive. We also wanted to reassure you that senior English will still carry some of the same components of graduation project as some of these things are inherently embedded in the English 4 state standards. That would be the reading, writing, and speaking standards. So they're still going to do a research paper. They're still going to do presentations, and those things will continue to occur. That being said, going forward, we wanted to provide just a little bit of information about how many students were opting to keep this as an elective credit, because we knew that we would have some kids that would, number one, just want to keep it, and number two, they would need to keep it because they might need it as a graduation requirement. So we've elected to keep it as an elective credit so that some of our students can continue with that. That being said, we have about 60 out of almost 1,800 students that have opted to keep it, and the vast majority have decided to move away from it. Some of our schools, keeping in mind they do have culminating projects based on their signature programs, IB program, our STEM program, Lyceum program. All of our schools have some form of other project and presentations going on, but in regards to the graduation project, the vast majority of our seniors taking it through English 4 have opted out of that. And then the students that are continuing will continue to receive support from their English 4 teachers. This is just a breakdown by school of what that looks like in terms of how many schools have kids continuing with graduation project as an elective. And then the third column just indicates their signature program projects that may be going on that may have a component that looks a little bit like senior project, but it's basically related to their signature program. So as you can see, we don't have a lot of kids that are opting to keep it unless they may be involved in one of their signature programs at the school that they attend. That being said, how do we go forward? So our recommendation going forward is to allow students that are looking for some sort of project-based class or project-based learning to consider our service learning or our honor service learning classes that we offer, or consider some of our specialty or signature programs in order to have that opportunity if they are seeking that opportunity. And then going forward, there's new legislation coming out. It is the CCRG, the Career and College Ready Graduate legislation. And that legislation helps us to align with the community college in providing an opportunity for our students that meet certain criteria to receive embedded support and help to prepare them for success at the community college. So by students taking the CCRG English 4 or the CCRG Math 4, this would allow these students, if they successfully complete the course, to not have to take a 100 level course at the community college, which typically would be for no college credit. So a Math 100 or an English 100, they still would pay for the course, but they would not receive credit for that course at the community college. By taking these courses and embedding these modules into our existing courses, this would allow our students to have the opportunity to not have to do that. And this is going to be in legislation, and it does start for next year's seniors. So we think that that's going to be something that's going to sit inside of our English 4 for our English students that need it, and it will be a brand new math course for students that need CCRG math, and that will be a standalone course. That being said, this is just some basic criteria of what it would look like in terms of how you would qualify for a CCRG English or a CCRG Math. It's going to be basically students that fall within a certain GPA range or below a certain GPA range, and also students that score below a certain level on the ACT or SAT. So if you score in a certain GPA range, but you have a really, really good ACT or a really good SAT score, that could actually pull you out of the required courses. But if you don't, it would be based on your GPA and also your ACT, SAT, but one or the other could pull you out of the requirement from having to take it. We do think we'll have kids that may just want to take this course because they would not want to have to take a 100 level course at the community college. So it would be, we think at this point, open to all students, required of some students, but open to all students if they don't fall within that GPA range. And again, like we mentioned earlier, completion of the CCRG courses will allow for students to transition straight into English courses and math courses at the community college without being a remedial course. So we think that's a positive. A lot of this legislation has been developed to try to reduce the developmental footprint of students going forward into the community college. We do have a training actually tomorrow right here in this room. So we're training the region here, and so we'll find out more information on that. So I don't know that we have an answer to every question that you may have, but we will be here tomorrow to participate in training, and we do have teachers from each of our high schools participating in that training. It'll be a train-the-trainer type of professional development tomorrow, and then we will roll this out as we go forward. So certainly happy to report back on that or try to answer any questions that you may have regarding graduation project and it kind of where it's going and how many kids are still in it, and then also moving forward into CCRG based on that legislation. Any questions?
I have a question. You had mentioned, Dr. Smith, you had mentioned that the different high schools, and Mr. Bryant, you may be able to answer this too, their English 4 may be looking differently based on the high school that you attend. Is that still going to be the case going
Based on the
forward?
high school that you attend? No, this legislation I think would be in place for all of our
Not for the
students.
CCRG classes, but I'm saying English 4 in general. So for regular English 4.
Yeah, so we're not sure, yeah. So there is the possibility that we could have to offer an English 4, a CCRG English 4, and then an honors English 4. But hopefully we'll find out in the very near future as to whether or not we could just opt to go one way, or do we have to provide 3 options. And so we hope to find out more information on that going forward. Did that answer?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't think that everyone would have to, you would have to either do honors or CCRG. I would still think you'd have that on level, would you not? Because the CCRG course would be more for the developmental ed course.
Well, what we would actually prefer, and Mr. O'Brien and I have talked about it, is that we wouldn't offer the on-level. It would just be the CCRG course. Because, as he said, there is a cutoff for which you are eligible, and it's required. And if your GPA is below that, then you would enroll in the on-level course. And we think that those students, maybe at a later point in their high school career or a later point just in life, might decide that they want to transition to the community college. And at that point, they would only be eligible for remedial courses. And so if we could provide them that support, even if it wasn't required by the state early, then we think it would be to their benefit.
I think I'm confused.
I'm sorry. So as Mr. O'Brien said, there are 3 options right now. It would be the on-level English, the CCRG English, and then the honors level, and then, of course, AP. What we would like to do is to eliminate the on-level and just have the 2 options, which would be honors and then the CCRG.
So
And
if you're not to interrupt, but if you're saying if your GPA is below a certain level, you're in the CCRG class. If it's above a certain level, you're automatically in honors?
So you have to, and Mr. O'Brien, is it 2.7? Is that the cutoff?
The range that we've been hearing is 2.2 to a 2.799.
Yeah.
So
So
in
a
that
student,
range.
so a student that has a 2.1 would not be eligible by what the state has given us as a definition. We want to make them eligible. We want to provide them that opportunity, because really in the real world, you know, show me the difference between a child that has a 2.1 and a child that has a 2.2. And in all likelihood, they're going to, at one point, you know, if they want to make the decision to take community college courses, you have one child who has had this support through this course, and now they can go in and get those credit-bearing courses. But then this other child, just simply because the state said your GPA wasn't high enough, now you have to take remedial courses. We think that puts them at a disadvantage. So anything that we can do to advantage students, we want to be able to provide them. And I think hopefully tomorrow, Mr. O'Brien will get some clarification if we are going to be able to offer that as a district.
So you're talking about the lower level, like
Yes.
if the state is going to mandate that you have to be above the minimum threshold.
Yes.
And I'm talking about on the other side, the maximum threshold. If you have a student who's at 3.0, they're automatically going to be in honors.
In the honors or AP, because they've far exceeded, don't need this additional support, yes.
And you may have a kid that opts to be there. They may have a 3.0 or 2.9, and maybe they know they're going the community college route, and they may opt for that.
For the CCRG class. So you're just trying to see if there's going to be some flexibility. in
That's what
terms
we're
of
looking
that-
to find
that
out, and
GPA.
we're hoping that there will be.
Right.
We're, initially, a year ago, they said yes, that, it would be open to students, because these were a lot of the same questions that we had. What happens if a kid is above and wants to be in this? What happens if a kid is just below and wants to be it? Are we going to say no? Our initial information was that it would be open to these students as well, because certainly we don't want to close the door on students, on either side of that, if they want to engage in this, because this is an opportunity for them to save money and to enter, post-secondary education at a higher level. So we would want to provide that opportunity for all of our students, whether they were just above or just below. So.
Is there any possibility of doing the CCRG classes in junior year as well?
It's my understanding that the modules for the English portion will be designed to be embedded within the English 4 class, which would make it very difficult to continue a graduation project if we had that. And I know we're not, because we've decided as a district to go forward, but it's our understanding that that will live in the English 4. The math course will be a brand new created CCRG math. And the reason for that is really when our kids come through English, it's pretty sequential. You're going 1, 2, 3, and 4, or 9, 10, 11, 12 in terms of grades. But with our math courses, our students go in a lot of different directions after Math 2. They may go for an opt-out route, or they may go Math 3, and then they may go pre-cal, AFM, discrete math, AP math. So they go a lot of different directions when they come out of math. So it's really hard to sit those modules into one particular math class. So they've created a new math course for this, because it wouldn't sit very effectively or easily into the multiple different math courses in which kids may go.
Does anyone else have any questions?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Item E, quarterly budget summary ending 9/30/2019, Appendix H. Mary Hazel Small.
Thank you. Just wanted to bring this quarterly budget summary for the period ending 9/30/19. This is the same format you've seen for past quarters that just shows a budget to actual comparison. And as of the end of September, we were at about 32% of expenditures as a percent of budget. I did want to point out that I don't bring one for June 30th, because that'll be the financial statements, and we do, they are complete, and I think I sent you a summary, but we are planning to bring that to your January board meeting.
Are there any questions? No? All right. Thank you, Ms. Small. Item F, Ethics 360, Appendix I. Julie Askew.
Thank you. I'd like to draw your attention to the little cardstock card that you have, and then it's also on the screen. Excuse me. Ethics 360 is an online platform or a digital portal that we are launching hopefully later this month, later in November. And of course, it's different than the student app we talked about a little earlier, the Sandy Hook Promise app, Say Something. This is really a consolidated site for all concerns reported to us. These are for non-emergency situations, so basically I've just given you this visual or infographic to better understand. I know you've seen narrative paragraphs about it. Basically, this is going to be available on our webpage. There will be banners or kind of visually draw your attention to those if you are looking to report a concern, provide information on a complaint, that kind of thing. This would be for anyone wanting to report to us, again, non-emergency issues such as non-emergency bullying, harassment, a parent concern, a student concern, staff concern, anything like that. This will consolidate and provide transparency for having a single portal for all of these to be logged. If somebody calls into our office, we will have our office staff trained in either helping them provide the information internally into the site, or our staff will do that for them, so that then these concerns can be triaged to the different department or school that is connected to the concern, and then issues can be investigated, and then there can be ongoing communication with the reporter. So if we have an anonymous report of bullying or harassment, again, the site will urge anyone with an emergency to contact 911. But if it's a concern that needs to be resolved, but it's not an emergency situation at that moment, someone can report anonymously. They will provide some type of email address, or they can just leave their information. If they don't want to include an email address, they will get a PIN number, and they can keep logging into the site, and the investigator or the person receiving the concern can communicate back to the anonymous person within the site. That way we don't lose communication, and we have a way to clarify concerns if we have questions about information that was included. Again, this will be, we will have staff at all of our schools trained, so that if we need to send a concern that way, then there will be a way to track those. People can log in if they've made a report. They can log in and see where it is in the investigation process. Any notes that are put in, any confidential notes that are put in on the district side won't necessarily be available to the reporter, but we can make certain things available to them so that they have a response to the concern. The other thing that we think is important about this is the data and reporting feature. We will be able to keep and run reports of logs of complaints or concerns that have been provided to us, whether it's from parents, whether it's from students, whether it's related to certain items like we've discussed tonight. If it's a concern about a particular teacher, or concern about a bus route, things like that, we will be able to tease those things out and identify trends in order for us to resolve any kind of issues. So this is just for your information. We had a conference call earlier today. We have, Kristen Jackson and I have been working very closely with this group on our training, and our conference call today was really about setting the training times and making sure that we determine, because we've customized this particularly for our school system. We're only the second district in the state to use this, but we're identifying our training features and the different populations and how they need to be trained. So, do you have any questions?
I think it sounds like a great product, great idea. I'm glad to hear that we're doing it.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Comments? No? Item number G, Policy Services, Appendix J, has my name after it, but I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Bullard.
Thank you, Ms. Eastep. The North Carolina School Boards Association offers a service where they will review your policy manual in its entirety. They will recommend changes. They also have suggested policies that they provide for school boards who subscribe to their service. They also provide updates to the policies. If you subscribe to their service, they will constantly monitor all the changes to the laws and regulations, both federal and state, and provide with periodic updates regarding necessary changes. So it is a way to ensure that your policy manual is up to date and continuously updated as changes in the laws and regulations come out. And you can see the information provided. They have various levels of service based on the cost. It cost $29,900 for a complete customized overhaul of your policy manual. Again, they're just recommending changes to you. It would still be up to your policy committee and your board to accept any recommended changes that they suggest. And then after that, They have an update service where if you want them to customize your updates, I believe it's about $6,000 a year. If you don't want the updates customized and you just want copies of their template policies that come out, I think it's about half that, about $3,000 a year. As you can see, there are various levels of service that they can provide, but those are the basic ones. I would say probably most of the local school boards in the state subscribe to it. I was asked to obtain this information and provide it for the board's consideration, not for decision tonight. It's on for an information item, I believe, but just make the board aware of it, and I believe the purpose is to receive feedback from the board as to whether it's something the board is interested in pursuing. A representative of the School Board Association is willing to come and answer any specific questions or talk to board members or meet with the board or staff if you so choose. If you decide to purchase the entire the entire review and update, rewrite, so to speak, of your policy manual, they're recommending that it takes 18 months to 2 years to actually accomplish that. You would do them in phases, as we have done in the past. You would do it in phases, and what they would do, if you asked them to customize the policies based on what you already have, they would take your existing policies and they would incorporate anything that you have chosen as a local system that may not be standard or may not be required by law, such as probably the dress code, for example. They would customize what your preferences are regarding the dress code into their standard form. Like I said, it's a long process, but it would enable us as a system, I think, to ensure that our policies, are updated in a more timely manner, because they have a team of lawyers whose job is specifically dedicated to reviewing all of the laws, regulations, both state and federal, as they come out, and then they send out their updates pretty quickly after that. So a lot of times the School Board Association will provide information sooner than is typically available if you don't have a person dedicated full-time to constantly monitoring all of your policies all the time. Anybody have any questions?
So approval for these would still follow the standard format? I mean, if they came back with, 20 changes in one section, how do you piecemeal that?
Well, they would all go to the policy committee
Okay.
for discussion, and then the policy committee would make a recommendation, and whatever.
But they
the
would
policy-
still be on
Yeah.
for first read?
Yeah, you'd still have first reading and board approval, and ultimately the board would have the authority to approve or not approve any recommendation of the School Board Association. It's the board's policies. The service is just to provide recommended changes or recommended updates to the board.
They would have caught this ADA policy, wouldn't they?
Yeah, I think
Yes.
I've talked to Allison Schaefer, who's the head legal counsel at the NCSBA, and they do have many counties who have done this, and it's just because you look at the size of our policy manual, and I don't know if you all have gotten, the newer board members have gotten a written copy of the policy manual, but it's like that thick, and trying to keep up that updated, I don't think you can. And so rather than try to guess which policy needs to be adjusted and when, this would allow us to, to take that, and, Ms. Schaefer said it could be a year, could be 18 months, up to 18 months to do this, but it would allow us to be part of that process, but it would also make sure that we have all of the policies that we need, that we're not missing one, that one's not out of compliance, but the other one is, that the cross-references are all there. So, I see the value in this, but I was the one that asked Mr. Bullard to bring this to find out this information, and then I wanted to see what y'all thought.
Can I give the new members some background information? I've been on this policy committee for 16 years, and when each year we were asked, each division was asked to look at their policies and to make their revisions. So when we got Mrs. Adams, and I became the chair, we developed a format because we had better technology. We didn't have to have the printed manual. And each division, we spent a great deal of time and we completely revised the manual. The feedback that I got from senior staff and those people who came to the meeting found out things they didn't know because they'd never read somebody else's policy. They only focused on their own because they had other things to do. So we learned a great deal. Now, we have had one policy that has created a problem because we didn't have it updated. That was somebody's responsibility. But we've had change of personnel. We've had other things that have really monopolized central office with unnecessary research and questions and learning situations. The disadvantage, or the advantage certainly is to have a legal team that can keep us updated. That's a great deal of money that we have saved along the way. And we've done well. Except for tonight, we had some mess ups, but I've already gotten an apology and I'm going to get on to somebody else because I know you have so many other things, but when we come before the public, we need to be prepared.
Wait, isn't this something you kind of do?
Excuse me?
The sites and stuff for policy updates? This is part of your, I don't know if job description, but you update policy, research policy.
I do,
sites.
if I'm made aware, based on the training that I go to twice
Right.
a year of updates, I will suggest a change. If the divisions ask me about a change, I will help them with it.
Do you have access to, there's a school board attorneys association, right?
Yes,
So you have access to questions through that association too, correct?
yes. But I can tell you that with respect to the one policy that we revised tonight, I don't think that specific issue has been presented in any of the trainings that I've gone to at least twice a year for more than 10 years. So even with all the training, there are still things that you may not be aware of that a policy service like this can point out.
How many policies do we have?
Several hundred.
I mean, that's a tall order for any one person or really any one committee. I mean,
It would.
It seems duplicative to me. I mean, you have a school board attorney, part of his job, I would say, would be to stay current. And I was on the policy committee last year, and I know we went section by section. And we were able to review that stuff, and I think in reviewing those sections, Wayne was able to familiarize himself with specific policies and update us on the current law of those policies. So that's just spending $30,000. I think we can figure out other ways to spend $30,000.
But I think you don't know what you don't know. So you could be looking at a policy and not know that there should be another policy attached to it. And I think that's ultimately the problem. We've had a couple situations where we didn't have policies that we should have. And again, that's where I think this would catch those situations. And again, if it's the board's will not to, that if they say this is not the time to spend that money, then, so be it. We'll keep going as we are. And this was not an intent to say that the policy committee isn't working very hard. They are. I just think it is, I think it's a mammoth, if not impossible task for that committee and this board to stay updated on 9 different sections or however many sections we have and know which policies we have and are they updated, and which policies we don't have and we need. So,
All I would
That's
say
my
is,
thought.
and I understand where you're coming from, and I hate to even say this, but if we can find $30,000 to spend on the policy, I bet we can spend that on the bus drivers. I hate to even say that, but I'm sure people were thinking of it. And
I'm
I'm
sure,
dead
but-
serious, and I'm not,
I
that's
agree
not a
with you.
joke.
I'm totally
If we
agreeing
can
with
find
you.
30, if we're gonna think about spending $30,000 on, a 5-star policy plan, when we have a school board attorney that helps us update, let's spend that $30,000 on
And
You're
that.
comparing, but you're
But I
comparing
understand.
apples with
You're- but
you're
we're looking at
comparing
luxury.
apples with, it's not luxury. You're
It is
comparing
luxury.
apples with, that, if we had had this service, and again, I'm not trying to sell anybody anything, but if we had had the service, we may not have been out of compliance with ADA law.
It is, it
Well,
is.
the
luxury.
So that's
ADA
pretty
is-
important.
That's a really
We-
important law that any lawyer or attorney for school board,
Well,
No, I'm not,
I'm just,
But I will say too that, in our policy committee meetings, it's not just an annual review of all the policies. They are constantly bringing revisions and changes to us. And now with the new personnel and people in place, and I would think that Title IX people and people who have government oversight, you should be receiving that information, and it should be included in policy and brought to us.
it should be every year. When I used to do Title IX, they sent it out yearly, and you updated and went through it.
But if you go on the
that's one
website,
thing.
our website is very friendly, easy to use. We have an index, so you can find, you don't have to worry about the search and all that. You can find what you're looking for. Apparently you can, because we have lots of parents who are very good at finding what they need. But when you go on this website, the one from the state, School Board Association, it's a challenge to find something, because I wanted to find out more about service animals, and I wanted to find out the statutes and it's very cumbersome. So you have to get used to it, and we could, but that's a great deal of money.
but they're in compliance.
I mean, I understand they're in compliance, but statutes are living organisms, you know what I mean?
So you need
They-
people to update them and look at them.
And I understand
And we
that.
got one person.
You're right, we do, that's one of his main job functions.
And that will
And
be
contract
on the-
law and a lot of other things, so
Lawsuits.
lawsuits.
Well, no, that we have outside counsel for that.
Again, it's the application of the policy, even if
No,
we
we don't.
have
Put
it,
them on hold, remember?
if it's not applied appropriately at
We have
the
our
school
insurance
level.
fund on this, depend on them. We milked that one pretty good.
No, not really. All right. So I'm taking it to hear lots of mumbles of no. So we will table that one. And, well, I mean, there's nothing to do other than just, it seems like there's not a movement to go forward on that one.
Well, I'd like to put it on the agenda for next month.
Let's vote on it now.
Well, we're not, it's on for information, it's not a vote.
Okay.
Guys, I would remind you, you haven't budgeted $30,000 for this. This would
There
have to
you
be
go,
part of the
that
budget
too.
process.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah, it was just
Somebody else
whether or not we
has
wanted to
money.
go forward with more information.
If you want more information, that's one thing. If you want to spend $30,000, I would suggest we make this part of next year's budget process and make it a discussion there.
That's a good plan.
That'll give us time to explore systems that are using this and see how it works.
I can survey the other systems and see who they use and get that back to you.
If you want to go forward with it, if not, we can leave it as is.
I think it's important to at least continue that discussion, because it's not just about being in compliance, but it's doing what's right. We have policies that are out of date or need to be updated, then we need to update them so we can follow them correctly.
Well, if you go through our policy, you can see when the policy was first established. You can see when it was revised, and you can see how many times it's been reviewed.
Also, I would encourage you to look at our policies. You'll see how often those policies are actually reviewed. I mean, I know we went through,
I've seen it.
you'll see the bottom where, if you look at the bottom, it shows you where people actually looked at them.
And your dress
we
code
do
policy
update.
has the most numbers on it.
I've seen that. I've seen that.
But many of our policies are local. They're to our needs for this system, for our school district. I just think we have to be more responsible for any government regulation or state regulation, and we have been for the most part.
I'm not sure what that means. I mean, there are certain
Well,
laws
we
and
had
statutes we
some-
have to adhere to, but you can also keep your local, or your local policies.
Yes.
So, but, all right, so if there is a desire to put this on or get more information, I guess Dr. Markley's gonna look into other districts and
Yeah,
what
I'll
they
try
are
to,
doing.
try to have something, if you're gonna do a work session, I'll try to have something for the work
Okay,
session.
yep. So that would take us to item number 9, board chairperson's report, and item A, the work session. I think we haven't had a work session in a while. We probably should schedule one. I think we've got some issues that we need to talk about. We have one that is going to be jointly scheduled with the commissioners in December.
The 5th of the-
Yeah, which is the 5th. We would be on for the 19th, but we already have something scheduled that day, right?
I would suggest January, because they're supposed to come
Yeah.
back in January, and hopefully in January, they would actually have a budget, when there may be some topics that come out of that as well.
So would everyone be okay with scheduling a work session in January?
Is it a Saturday?
That's good. We can generate
It would be
our
the 4th.
topics along the way.
I can have Ms. Adams send out a poll of dates.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to look for a work session in January, and then if you have topics that you would like to cover, also send those to Ms. Adams as well, if that's okay, Ms. Adams? All right, thank you. Item number B, Isaac Bear Early College High School update. I believe I sent you all the update, but we have had a couple of parent meetings. We will be doing a walkthrough of the modular units, is that what they call them? On November 16th. It's for parents, but there will be people from UNCW there as well.
Are these the ones across the street?
They're currently located on campus, because they're using them as the science buildings right now. They would be relocated across the street. The meeting is the 16th at
10:30.
Not gonna, there's two.
Yeah.
There's a 10:30, is there also a 6 o'clock one? that day?
6 o'clock.
Okay, I've got it twice.
Unless he added that, they added that.
No, that's right. No, it's 10:30. So we also will show folks where the new location is and where the proposed permanent location is.
What was that date? Jim?
That's Saturday,
November
the 16th.
At 10:30.
Yep.
Yep. Any questions about that? Item number 10, committee reports. Title IX, Mr. Jarrell Lewis, is he still here? Yes, and still awake? Thank you. Sorry for the long wait. Mr. Lewis has now taken over as chair of that committee, and we appreciate his work.
Good evening, board. Thank you, Ms. Eastep. So since I've been in my position since September 11th, I have had my first Title IX committee meeting as the chair of that committee. It was October 21st, 2019. I'll just talk about some of the things that we discussed during that meeting. The first point was I provided a director update, and I talked about my experience up to that point in my role as Title IX director. And I also talked about some of the trainings that I've been able to roll out. So specifically, I had a training with the high school counselors on October 8th, which talked about the basics of Title IX, introductory training, talked about the scope and reporting requirements, and the role of social workers and counselors. So that was on October 8th. On October 17th, I had a more in-depth training with the assistant principals, letting them know about the basics of Title IX and how to actually resolve Title IX complaints. I was able to create a PowerPoint that created a step-by-step plan for how Title IX incidents should be resolved from the moment it's received to the final notice that we would send to parents involved. So that was on October 17th. And also on October 23rd, I was able to present a basic training introduction to internal auditors at their workshop about the basics of Title IX scope and reporting requirements. So also at the October 21st Title IX meeting, we had a discussion about policy updates. I provided and showed my edits and suggestions for the Title IX bully harassment discrimination policy that the Title IX committee had been reviewing for a number of months prior to my arrival in this position. So I did show what my suggestions were, and we discussed what some of those suggestions should be. So that's something that we did at the meeting. Also, we discussed the bullying, harassment, and discrimination climate survey. We talked about how that survey would be launched to get the picture and of the community, what individuals thought, who should be the target audience for the climate survey, I think was being previously discussed prior to my arrival. So that was another point that we talked about at the October 21st meeting. Since then, I had a meeting with Dr. Jacqueline White and Ms. Amy Feith to talk about how we would roll out a climate survey, because they have some expertise in regards to launching climate surveys, particularly about Title IX. So at that meeting, we've been able to get it down to the possibility of having two Title IX climate surveys about bullying, harassment, and discrimination. The first being rolled out fairly soon, and would be about 5 questions, and then a phase 2 later on that would be more in depth, talking about individual experiences with these issues in the particular district. We also talked about the target audience for the climate surveys being middle school students and high school students, as well as former students, current and former parents of students, as well as current and former employees as well. And then also talk about logistics in regards to how we actually roll out the climate survey. Those discussions are still ongoing regarding, is it this climate survey going to be online, electronic, or in person, and the opt-out versus the opt-in provisions in regards to who actually participates in the survey. And the last point that we talked about at the Title IX committee meeting was just some events. One was a human trafficking event that Ms. Emma Jane was putting on 11/1, Jane Emma, I'm sorry. She put on November 1st. So that's an event that was going on, talking about human trafficking, which of course is a problem US-wide, nationwide. And also the EYES initiative, they had a training that crossed over and talked about bullying, harassment, and discrimination in Title IX issues. So those are some quick points about what the Title IX committee has been talking about and looking into as of October 21st, 2019. Are there any questions about anything I've discussed today?
Yeah, the survey, you're still talking about it? You haven't put it together? Nobody's decided on a date for it to come out or anything?
Yes, so in regards to the actual questions, though all those have been discussed and are pinpointed and are finalized, at this point it's just a matter of how do we actually go about doing it from a technology standpoint. So I have discussions coming up in the very near future about the actual logistics of rolling it out. How do we actually?
Okay, this is your role, not just the committee's role, correct? Is the Title IX coordinator to find out information about what's going on with the schools, correct?
Yes, that's what the survey.
So you say in the near future, do you have any kind of dates going on here?
In regards to when I'm going to have the meeting with the technology individuals in central office. So it's just a matter of getting schedules together. I just had a conversation with them today to get that together. So I would.
Do you have a tentative time when you can get this?
I am trying to have this launch within the next 2 weeks.
Okay, that's what I needed to know. Because I say within the next 2 weeks, hopefully we'll have this climate survey out and in the schools so we can get the students' feedback.
Yes, it is 95% done, just the rollout process.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for questions. Any other questions in regards to what I've discussed today?
I want to just thank you for coming on board and for working so hard these first 2 weeks. Correct me if I'm wrong, it is the official recommendation of the committee to implement that survey. And I'm sure you will do that as soon as you're able.
Yes, we'll look forward to getting that launched and looking forward to the feedback that we received from the community. All right.
Can you send us the questions?
Excuse me?
Can you send us, you said you'd already had the 5 questions
Yes,
ready.
I can send those out to you tomorrow.
Thank you.
All right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Family communications update?
Oh, yes. We had a wonderful session here in October, the 23rd. It was an invitation to parents who are new to our system, new because they have children now entering into kindergarten or transitioning from one middle school to high school. And it was a chance for them to sit and share their experiences, question the technology part, if they couldn't make the connections to the website, and we worked with them on how to go about that. It was a wonderful informal setting. We divided up into kindergarten groups and primary and elementary, and then the high school and middle school, and each team had a leader from the committee. And it was so informal and so comfortable for each parent that came to speak. And we had, about 40 people here, and some brought their children, and they behaved so nicely. And we had such a wonderful family time. But we learned a great deal of what we can do to enhance our technology and forms of communicating and what their needs were. But they were so appreciative of Connect 5, and that most of the schools also sent an email about the information. So some realized that they didn't give the right phone number, so they were not getting that information. So they learned something and we learned something. And our next meeting is going to be next Wednesday, and the committee then will hear the reports from the roundtable discussions, and then we'll go from there with additional improvements on how we can communicate among the schools and the community.
All right, thank you. Dress code.
Yes, our next meeting is going to be on the 20th. At that time, we hope to have a policy ready to kick up to policy.
All right.
I can tell you that 2 things are absolutely true. A, I do not understand for the life of me how and why children dress the way they do. And B, there is not a single person on our committee who has not at least twice blushed over some of these discussions. It is a engaging and interesting, illuminating committee. We're doing good work, so we'll have something for you soon.
Thank you.
Advisory Council for Special Education.
I just, great group of people. You saw the teachers tonight that were being recognized for the monthly special ed teachers recognition situation, and that's going to go on through the year. I would like to say I've been in the schools and seen some of these the teachers at work daily. They all deserve to have recognition and awards. That being said, what they do need is practical supplies in some of the schools. It depends on the school. So, as I mentioned before, we're going to be doing the stuff to bus. It'll probably, at this rate, it might be after January before we get it in place. But one of the things that we're trying to find out is how to organize it properly with a central location to make sure that the supplies we do get to the schools that need it, because there's a huge variety in our schools as far as the different classrooms, teachers having their needs for the special ed kids in the classes. So that's what we're working on right now, is getting that together for around Christmas time for a year.
Redistricting.
MAP 3D came out this afternoon, along with the free and reduced lunch numbers. Next meeting is Tuesday, the 19th at 3:30. As always, we invite everyone there to listen to us. I know the board has had a lot of input during this process and been able to make suggestions. So I believe the 19th, the committee will vote on a proposal to bring back to the board on December 3rd. I would strongly encourage all board members to continue to look at the maps. I believe it's the intent that on December 3rd, we'll be listening to the proposal. By that time, I'm sure board members have looked at the maps over and over and over and over and are, I don't want to say sick of looking at the maps, but we've listened to a lot of public comment, and I believe we're on our 8th set of maps. I think it's 8th set.
Yep.
So we're on our 8th set of maps after listening to public comment. So I know other board members have looked at those as well. So I would say be prepared to vote on December 3rd after the presentation. I mean, there's nothing new that we're going to know after or for us after the presentation, since we've been paying attention to it. So I would make sure also to put on the agenda the plan to vote on redistricting on December 3rd. I don't know if I need to get a second for that, but I think that's actually already on the agenda. Is that right, Dr. Markley?
I believe so.
So voting on December 3rd for redistricting.
All right, any other committee updates that we missed? Just real briefly, we did have an equity, diversity, and inclusion meeting last night at 5 o'clock, and it went very well. Thank you, Dr. Smith, for leading that discussion. We made it through some kind of more introductory things. Didn't make it quite as far as we thought we would, but it was very informative, and I think we have a good direction that we're taking. Moving on to item 11, consensus items. Item A, personnel. Appendix L, Dr. Welmers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Request the board approve the personnel matters as presented.
Is there a motion to approve?
Move for approval.
Is there a second?
Sorry.
Somebody second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Abstention.
Okay, so,
And that would be because your wife was on there, correct?
My wife has been hired as a teaching assistant.
Just need to let everyone know.
okay. So, all those in favor say aye again, sorry. Any opposed? So, 5 yays and 1 abstention. Item 12, old business. Item A, 2019-2020 low-performing school plans, Appendix O. Dr. Smith?
Yes, last month I brought to the board the 2019-2020 low-performing school plans for information. We made those available on the district website for 30 days for comment. We did not receive any public comment, and so I'm bringing those back to the board for approval, and then they will be submitted to the State Board of Education for approval.
Is there a motion from the board?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? They are approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item B, policy for second reading. Policies for second reading, Ms. Nichols.
The policy 5400 naming school system facilities was explained to us at the last board meeting. We've had time to look over it. I'll ask Mr. Bullard if he'll quickly review it for us.
Yes, Ms. Nichols, the change here was to make sure that when you are naming a facility after an employee, that you cannot name it after a current employee, and if an employee retires, that employee must be retired at least a year before a proposal can come before the board requesting a facility to be named after that employee. And then once the proposal is made, there's a 6-month waiting period that was in the existing policy for public comment and consideration from the time the proposed name is announced to the time the board can vote on it. So the only real change is to clarify that you cannot name a facility after an existing employee or an employee who has been gone for less than a year. still have the 6-month waiting period.
And they still would have to be 2 board members that would want to put it on the agenda in order for it to be considered. So this is a policy that you probably want to really get familiar with, because parents or community members will be approaching you about naming different facilities. Okay? So we need to vote.
Is there a motion to approve policy number 5400, naming facilities?
Move to approve 5400.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It is approved.
The next policy, well, let's see what number it is. 6431, drug and alcohol policy for employees, including employee drug and alcohol testing. And Dr. Wilmers, if you'll give us a quick overview of this.
This policy is a new policy. It's a rewrite of an old policy, existing one, bringing it up to date in almost all areas. Basically applies to the conduct of employees, whether they're on duty or not. They can't be under the influence of alcohol or drugs while they're at work, while they're driving a school system vehicle, or under a safety-sensitive position where they're working for the school system, or they are charged of pleading guilty or no contest to an alcohol or drug-related offense. So this basically specifies how we manage those things through the system.
And this policy allows for drug testing of employees who are believed to be under the use of alcohol or drugs.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Have our administrators who would be administering the drug tests received training in probable cause, reasonable suspicion?
Yes,
and what
sir,
type of training?
They have. Yes, sir.
And what did that training consist of?
It was a PowerPoint that the National Department of Transportation provided us for years when they did the training each year. I went through it about 28 times, and so they said that I was pretty well qualified to do the training. So I've got that PowerPoint, and I do the training about once every year for principals, supervisors, transportation folks, anybody that wants to come. So that's the training. Be glad to send you the PowerPoint. It's pretty good.
Have they done any testing? I'm concerned about what happens when one of our employees is drug tested and an administrator turns that over to law enforcement. Or what would happen if, say, somebody claimed a religious freedom exemption under the RFRA. I really worry that a PowerPoint here is insufficient training and leaves us vulnerable to future lawsuits or problems. I would encourage a 6-month delay in this to really train up our administrators.
Well, the Department of Transportation's training is considered under federal law to be the standard. So what do you want us to do?
Testing before you're implementing this policy? Make sure the training was understood. And
What's the religious freedom part to drug testing?
the Religious Freedom Restoration Act
No,
was about the
I understand that part,
use.
but how is that?
We don't have any
affect-
Native American employees, any employees that could use drugs for religious reasons. I mean, the dog policy is the thing, I mean, it's the thing you don't expect to get you in trouble.
The dog policy?
I'm saying, it's those things that come out of nowhere that nobody thinks of in the first place that end up getting you in trouble.
Well, they'd need to tell us that when they were getting hired on, I would think.
I mean, I think we're, just because you're under the influence of a drug doesn't mean you're necessarily turning that over to law enforcement, because I think there's gonna be a heck of a lot of problems if you were to get in court and someone were to come ask about evidence, you know, all that stuff. I think this is mainly for the schools. I don't think we're doing law enforcement's job, are we?
No, I mean, the things this looks at is, one, if an employee would be under the influence while at work, there used to be a requirement basically that the people who judge that needed to be trained to do it, and I think that's a good thing. Most school systems don't always go there with that kind of training because, well, they just haven't. we have, so we've had that. Then it's also about the screening process we go through when we hire someone to drive under a CDL P&S license, and the screening we go through with those folks that drive with us or in safety-sensitive positions. So, I mean, this is we tailored this to be a pretty good policy to nail down the issues we've had in New Hanover County and that we've experienced and gone through. And I think it's pretty strong.
We also have to remember that the standard for this versus criminal is a lot different. So it's beyond a reasonable doubt. For criminal,
I just wanna
you
make
have
sure.
troopers that pull people over, you know, the DREs, drug recognition experts.
Right.
So there's a lot more stuff when it gets criminal. This is mainly for
Well,
protection.
we're under
of-
reasonable suspicion rules, so
I just want to make sure our administrators know that they can't, by law, turn that over to law enforcement.
Well, most corporations and businesses that drug test, they don't.
we don't turn it over to law enforcement, but what we do is if we suspect someone is under the influence of either a drug or an alcohol, and we request them to take a test, and they try to leave the building and drive their car off of property, we do notify law enforcement at that point. Then it's up to law enforcement as to what they want to do about this person going, getting the car and driving. But
I mean, if you thought a bus driver, I hate to bring bus drivers up, but if you thought a bus driver was under the influence, you'd call law enforcement.
Exactly, yeah. Someone in a safety-sensitive position like that, or like someone driving off campus that we think may be inebriated, we would call law enforcement.
So this is applying to the safety positions.
Right. This really defines the safety-sensitive position of those people that
drive behind,
are in direct contact with students in that way, like from bus mechanics, bus drivers, people who drive, things like that. But
Are there plans for is this annual training? Is this an annual requirement?
I normally do this every year. Sometimes twice, depending upon if we get a new herd of APs or folks in, or if someone wants the training. But now, if you're unhappy with me doing the training, I'll be glad to bring the NCDOT folks back. This was actually their idea to save us a little money. But we have a good relationship with them, and we can bring them back and have them do it.
Any further discussion, comments? Mr. Bowyer, have your concerns been alleviated?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, I need a motion to approve policy 6431, drug testing.
Move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? It is approved.
Thank you.
Item 13, new business. A, budget amendments, Appendix Q. Ms. Small?
Thank you. I request the board's approval of these amendments, but I just wanted to point it out, the format for state and general fund is slightly different. I had a formula error when I built the budget resolution from the detail file that summarized some of that information in the original one you approved last month incorrectly. So we didn't really change any of the line items in the budget. It was just summarized incorrectly. So that is shown in a separate column for you in both the state number 1 and the general number 2. And I just wanted you to be able to see that separately. I'll be glad to answer any questions you have.
Are there any questions? If not, is there, this is on, do we need a motion?
Yep.
Yeah, all right. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It is approved.
Thank you.
Item B, New Hanover County Sheriff's Department Contract School Resource Officers, Appendix R. Julie Askew.
Hi, thank you. I just ask that you consider approval of this memorandum of understanding for contracted services for the additional elementary and preschool school resource officers we have. That would be 11 of those officers, and this is funded by a grant from NCDPI.
Is there a motion to approve item B?
Move for approval.
there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item C, 2019-2020. Is it SIP or SIP?
SIP is fine.
SIP, okay. Executive summary is Appendix S. Dr. Smith?
So yes, so annually I bring to the board a request for approval of the school improvement plan summaries. You'll notice this year that the format is different for particular schools. As we have transitioned to the NC STAR system, which is a much more comprehensive, robust system, there were some schools that had more data than others, and for those schools that had the least amount of data, they wanted to be able to, they thought they would be able to better articulate the things that were happening in their schools with the traditional format for the executive summary. So that is why there's the difference between the two. But essentially, it's the same thing. It's the summaries are articulating those high-yield strategies that each school has prioritized as they're addressing their goals and what they want to see happen to focus on improvement in each of their schools. So would request the board's approval.
All
Move
right.
to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, we need a quick couple of minutes to change hard drives.
Okay. I'm so sorry for everyone
I
that's
am
waiting.
sorry, it's right before the second biggest issue of the night.
No.